I'm surprised that the stream went up so easily this time. Let's see if it actually continues. I guess I can go ahead and start talking because we're showing that you all are here. Hello. Today is the 20th of October, 2022. I'm Roy Potter, and I decided that it was time for me to put up a video. So here we are. It's been a while, so I might be a little rusty at this. And I don't expect a lot of people to show up, but if they do, great. First order of business is thank you that I'm 5x5 KO Ray. I appreciate that very much. Very, very much. And I know this background looks really interesting. I look a little red. I know it's the lighting again. These crazy LEDs they use these days. I just can't get the lighting right. They tell me I should use makeup to, but I'm not going to do that. So just so you know, I'm not going to do the makeup, the powder. No, I'm just not going to do it. So anyway, yeah, with the different colors and everything, the camera in the phone can't quite figure out what the actual color scheme is, and as I've often said, it has no white balance on there, so we just got to go with what we have. So I hope that's understandable. Hello again, everybody. As you come in, I'm really surprised so many people are showing up. I mean, it's been a month, hasn't it? Through 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. And I suspect that it may be even longer next time. I don't know. But I know this background looks. I've used it before, trying to send a message. It's time to kind of to leave the cities. Time to at least depart, separate yourself from what's going on in the world, and try to get ready for what's coming. And I've talked about that for a long time. And I've used this background before. You can see the little cabin here out in the mountains and the forest and the eagle flying by. That's what that is there, if you can see that. But the way it looks like I've got a wing on. So that wasn't intentional, okay? That wasn't intentional at all. What's this? What consequences of the AJ situation? Well, that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm not going to talk about that. First order of business, as I was starting to say, in the description box below are a bunch of links. And many times I've told you that since I've cut way back, that there are certain people that you should follow for information. Some have very good contacts and give you very good information. They expound on the issues, sometimes too much, I think. Sometimes you can get wrapped around the axle and go too long. I'm not going to mention a name, but there's one, I guess I'd say investigative journalist, who goes into so much detail that you get lost in the weeds. And I'm very hesitant to suggest somebody like that because often than not, and I'm not intending to make an accusation here, but I get worried that people that do that are using a shotgun approach. They're using a magic trick. And that is that they give you, it's like a fortune teller. They give you so much information and they hit so many possibilities and probabilities in their reporting and what they predict that they're going to hit something right. And then when they hit that something right, they really emphasize that and show how right they were, and then that you should follow them. Not that you shouldn't. I think a lot of information is good, but a lot of these folks that just throw out just tons and tons of detailed information, uh, it's good for those who are professionals, that want to follow that information. But I suspect that in many of these cases where you see that happening, it's actually because they're using that magic trick I told you about, where they shotgun approach everything. They shoot at something. They throw all this possibility out there as pellets, and then one or two will hit on target because they. I mean, even if you guess, you're going to be right sometime. I'm not saying that that's what it is. I think it is educated guesses by and large with some of these people that I'm talking about. But I'm not going to refer you to those. If you find them, that's great. I've mentioned their names before, but some of them, but I'm not going to go there today. In the description box below are some ones that I think that you should follow, and I've mentioned these before. Alexander Mercouris, Alex Christoforou, the Duran, of course, David Knight, who can get a little verbose sometime, a lot like me, but he's just trying to give you a lot of good background information, not just a quick flyby. That's a little different. It's not like it's throwing tons of information at you. And, and you have all these connections with the lines and everything, and trying to put that together. He doesn't do that. Uh, then we've got Jackson Hinkle, like I've talked about before, on the dive, Redacted, uh, and I've listed some others down there that I have used for some time. Not all of those. I mean, I've used all those, but I have a lot more sources. But these are things that you can go through, and I mentioned it before, but I've never actually put them. Maybe I did once, but this time I wanted to make sure that I put them in the description box so that you would know you have links to them. But the first two links in this video are the most important. Actually, the first three. One of the things that I've concerned myself with over the years is not just the politics and the military situation and those things, but as many of you know, spiritual information and historical information, and those combined. And because of that, I've said that, I'm not a traditionalist Christian or anything else for that matter. I've got my own approach, and that's the way I work. And for me, it's been a good journey. I don't dictate, I don't use dogma that you have to do certain things to find God. Chances are, as I explained to a very close friend the other day, no one can conjure up God. Normally, and I had a friend say this a long time ago, it's not who wants to talk to God that's important, it's who God wants to talk to. And so what I'm saying is that if you live your life righteously, I mean, everybody has, shortcomings and errors and things like that. But if you're not evil and you're trying to do the best you can, at some point in time, in my estimation and in my experience, God is going to have a very close, intimate communication with you. So I don't think you have to be Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, whatever, Mormon, whatever. God works with you at the level that you will understand. And a lot of times these people who insist that you be a part of their religious group, you're actually further along than they are. But the problem is, and I see this all the time, I saw one gentleman a little while ago complain about how he was being treated, and I said, well, the reason is because if you're not, and again, Catholics, this is just an explanation because this person had been accosted by these Catholic people that he needed to join their church to be saved. And I said, look, the Catholics have a real problem with their history, just like a lot of others do. And what you need to do is just not worry about the pejoratives that they throw at you as being a heretic, because according to most Catholics, at least the dyed-in-the-wool Catholics, for instance, and this is true of other religions as well, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc., certain Baptists, I mean, it goes across the board. If you're not with them, you're a heretic. But especially the Catholics, because they think that their religion goes all the way. And again, I don't want to get in an argument with any of you Catholics, but it goes back so far. They think that anything that goes against that dogma, that doctrine, those teachings, if you're not there, you're a heretic by definition. And so he felt very, very hurt by that. And I said, I can guarantee you, you're not. Okay. You're getting a lot of information that a lot of them don't get. The Catholics weren't even permitted to read the scriptures until sometime during the Middle Ages. So, at any rate, again, I don't want to harp on the Catholics, but that particular thing where anybody that's not a part of them is considered a heretic, and again, that goes for the Mormons, the Baptists, whomever. That's just not right. They don't understand the scriptures if they say that. So, at any rate, I can't give you a lot of people in those spiritual areas that I have much trust in. But there are two in the description box, and then we have all those others on the political situation. Like I said, the Duran, Jackson, Hinkle, David Knight. David Knight gets into spiritual things sometimes, so he's really good. And he's not dogmatic either, for the most part. But the first two are very important, and some of you will know who they are. The first one is Dr. Michael Heiser. Dr. Michael Heiser does an excellent job. He gets into the actual words in Hebrew and the Greek, for instance, which is very important. Sorry about that. I'm going to get some of these messages. I have some things going on. And a lot of you will know about him. You can go and look at his presentations. They're very good. Uh, I would suggest him to anybody, okay? My oldest son, as a matter of fact, has been following him for many years and has learned a lot from him. Again, nobody's perfect, but he does an extremely good job. And the second one, he's basically a Christian-oriented teacher. He comes from that background. He is a doctorate. He has a doctorate in I forget what it is now, but at any rate, he does have a PhD, which doesn't necessarily mean that he's qualified, but he has the spiritual insight and other things too, which add into that, and that's really good. Then there's Felicia Lockhart. She has, a lot of you have probably watched her channel. She does a lot of spiritual things. She talks, though, from a Hebrew perspective, from an Israelite perspective, from the law perspective. And I know for Christians that's kind of hard, and even for some Jews, but it's very good information. And so I want to encourage you to listen to her channel, especially when there's a guy that she has on there, Robbie, I think's his name. Very, very knowledgeable. He'll get into the New Testament. Felicia, not so much, but Robbie does, and they talk some really good information spiritually. And then the next one down from that is, of course, she took over Headlines with a Voice from Bettina at Bettina's request, and most of you have been following me know that story. And she does Headlines with a Voice too, so that has political information, and she'll do some spiritual things on there too. But her spiritual channel is primarily Felicia Lockhart, the Lockhart perspective. So those first two or three, I wanted to get those out there to you because at this point in time, I feel like our spiritual sustenance that we should be seeking for is really, really important at this time. I'm not doing very well at it. The pressures that are out there, all of the things that are going on, they're getting to me. I'm short-tempered. I get upset very easily. It's one reason why I had to stop doing YouTube and Twitter so much, because the blindness and the crudeness of so many. And I can get that way too, under certain circumstances. As some people say, I can rise to the occasion. But I don't want to do that. I can if I need to, but I just had to back off for that reason. Plus, there are so many people. I mean, I have to be extremely careful with whom I associate with on digits on the internet, etc. Because I really don't know much about them, and so many times when I've opened myself up, and it got bad. So don't feel slighted if I don't answer you. I'm not checking my DMs on Twitter anymore. If I go on Twitter like I did the other day, it's for a specific thing. I'll throw it up there and I get right off. I don't look at hardly anything else. On YouTube, as you can see, I've been not very good. I've been away for a while, and it's going to keep going that way, where I'm not going to be contributing very much. I think I kind of, given my spiel over the years. You can go back through all of my videos here or on Odyssey, and you'll know where I'm from. You'll understand where that is. So at any rate, those first 2, 3, spiritual information, because I think that's really important, and then the rest are the political, military kind of stuff that I get into as well. So I wanted to touch on those real quick, and I thought I would show you what kind of spurred me to do this video today, not just letting you know about the links, and especially the spiritual links with Dr. Michael Heiser and Felicia Lockhart, but something that happened that, and again, I'm not checking Twitter every day. I'm getting my information from other places entirely now. I first got Twitter many years ago to get that information from people that I thought I could trust, and for the most part, that's worked out for me. But like any social media, you start adding, and you start putting yourself out there more and more. And I just had to stop. Okay, I just had to stop. I know where to go to get information, and that's how I'm going to do it. But every once in a while, I'll check and see what's going on. So let me tell you what spurred this on. There were some people who attacked myself and others over our stand on this entire thing going on over in Ukraine. Of course, we know everything else associated with the financial crisis, the problem with shortages, everything. And everybody wants to blame it on Russia, and especially on Putin. And I looked at that and I thought, Americans still, and Eastern or Western Europeans for that matter, still do not understand history. They can't remember what happened yesterday, sometimes not even what they had for breakfast, much less the events that happened, say, 8 to 10 years ago or 2 to 3 decades ago. They can't remember that, and it's out of their understanding. It's off their radar. And so they just go with every wind of doctrine, every wind of propaganda that blows them, and they just go with it. Well, some of the people that follow that process do it on purpose, either because they're information war specialists that are out there to get you to buy the propaganda, or two, they really believe what they're telling you, even though you can prove they're wrong. An example of that was Judge Napolitano, who has his own program, had Colonel Douglas MacGregor on, who I have a lot of respect for. I think his take on the Ukraine situation is exactly as we have said, and it's gone that way. Some people say, well, why hasn't Russia won yet? Why weren't they bowling them over like you said they would? Because the Ukrainians are their people. Okay? Russia didn't want to go in there, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, type stuff, because those are their people. They didn't want to cause that kind of destruction. But the deceits of the West and of Kiev just have forced their hand now at this point in time. A lot of other people say, well, they had these disparate commands in the Donbass, etc., in those eastern areas, and so they weren't really serious. No, those were independent republics, independent areas. Some still belong to Ukraine in some regards, right? And of course, Ukraine still claims that. But at any rate, the point was, if they had put all 4 or 5 of those areas under one Russian commander, one general, as they have now, as Putin has now with Surovikin, that would have been viewed by those independents at that time, and even NATO and others, as a real usurpation. So they gave each area a separate commander, and I'll just give you an example of how this works. During the Bosnian Yugoslavian breakup back in the 90s, the big war that happened there, and I was there. I understand all this. The area, the country was broken down. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples: Bosnia Herzegovina, Serbia, and Croatia, just to give you an example. Okay, and there were others, but let's just use those 3. Each area had a separate NATO commander. They were all under NATO, but each one had a separate commander. There was no one commander that was controlling outside of the area. In other words, each area had its own command, and they dealt with those people locally. Well, that's kind of what the Russians are doing, or were doing, until they decided to make those part of Russia, those separatist areas. They were dealing with them as separate entities. Well, now they can have the overall commander, General Surovikin, in this regard. So that adds into all of this too. But getting back to the other situation, so I had a lot of these people making these accusations, and I'm not going to name them here. They'll know who they are if they're watching. I don't think they are anymore. I haven't even noticed this one particular guy following me on Twitter anymore, which is fine with me. But he worked in the White House, this particular guy, and when I was explaining what was going on with Russia in Ukraine, etc., he wanted to label me a Putinist Russophile. And I have a lot of respect for the Russians. I've often said the Russians should be our sister country. What's going on between our neocons and the people in our country that are controlling things, our administrative state, etc., and the Trotskyites who are the neocons, all those people, their war against Russia and trying to take it over has been really, Russia became communist because of these same types of people. The history is goes back a lot further than just what started back in February. As most of you know, the United States, the CIA, Britain, and Soros, for instance, that'll probably get me thrown off YouTube, uh, did that coup in Ukraine back in 2014. And then, of course, the Western Ukrainians out of Kiev have been killing Eastern Ukrainians, thousands of them since then. But and the media in the U.S. was talking about that for a long time, but then it was silenced because, of course, they want the propaganda that the nasty old Russians and the Eastern Ukrainians, they don't really want to leave. Eastern Ukrainians really don't want to leave Ukraine. Oh, yes, they do. I was really surprised to hear Mrs. Zelensky, uh, the I don't know how anybody can call him a president, but President Zelensky's wife saying, "Well, they're our people. We don't want them to go away." Well, then why have you been bombing them since 2014? Why have you been killing them, shooting into their civilian areas? That's been and not the way the Russians are doing it now, trying to take out military targets. No, they were just lobbing artillery and rockets at random, killing kids, women, old men, old ladies, anybody. It didn't matter. Not even military targets. So that's just the way that's been for a long time. I was also accused of not understanding the Russian history or what they're really like. Yeah, right. Well, like I said, this guy called me a Russophile and a Putinist apologist. And then he said to me and many others, you all need to get down on your knees and repent because Russia's evil and you need to, and he's Catholic, by the way. You need to repent and get back on board with the United States. Amusingly, it wasn't 24 to 48 hours later. The Pope. Remember, I said this guy was Catholic. I don't have much respect for Benedict or for the Pope right now. But I almost said Benedict. That's not who it is. Benedict's the one before this one. But the Pope came out and said, this is not Russia's fault. This is the West's fault and Ukraine. So anybody who's supporting, if you're not supporting Russia, you're basically wrong. Well, I never heard from him again because he was telling me I had to repent, and then the person that he believes is his vicar of Christ told him that he is wrong. I doubt that really influenced him that much, but I thought it was kind of karmic, I guess, that he got that rebuke from his spiritual leader. Anyway, so those types of things have been going on. You know how we've been, how I've myself and others have stood against the official narratives, no matter what they've been, for a very long time. I have the credentials that I can do that. I understand it when I see it. I may not know all the little intricate details or nuances, but I usually find them out at some point in time. Well, at any rate, so these things happened on Twitter where I felt like I needed to answer. And so this is a Twitter entry that I made on October 19th, which was yesterday, I guess. I went on and I saw some of these people saying, hey, we need to go after Russia. We need more sanctions. We need regime change in Russia, right? All that. You've listened to it. Accusing Putin of threatening nuclear weapons when we've been doing that to Russia for years. Our politicians have been saying that for a very long time, and some of our military-industrial complex people, they've been saying, "Oh, we just need to nuke Russia now and get rid of it." Well, now Putin didn't even say that he was going to nuke us. He said, "If you threaten us existentially, in other words, Russia as a state and a people, then we might go to the next level." All right. But regardless, and that's still bad. Don't misunderstand me. That's still bad. But the point is he didn't threaten. the use of nuclear weapons. You can't find that in his addresses anywhere. He just says that they'll have to go to the next level, basically, is what he was saying. But anyway, so here's my, if you can see this, here's my Twitter post. And yeah, that's my logo from my YouTube channel. You know, the intel community is our most dangerous domestic enemy. I haven't used that in my videos for a long time because I haven't had the internet connections to be able to do these live streams with all the, you know, all the nice little graphics and music and all that. Hope you understand. But in this tweet, I'm going to read it to you just so you know what I was addressing. This is what it says. I am avoiding social media and Twitter, but this video and plate with my YouTube channel motto apply to anyone and everyone who trusts the corrupt and criminal U.S. government. Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch just came out and said this: the DOJ FBI can never again be trusted. For that matter, neither can our Department of Defense, neither can our other institutions. I have a lot of doubts about how these elections are going to go next month. Maybe we'll make it through it. I don't know. And even if we do, who's going to get bought off again? Historically, when a government goes this corrupt and this criminal and this aggressive and empire building, when it gets there, historically there is but one remedy. I don't say what that remedy is. But if you think a little bit, it ain't the ballot box. And then I said this. For those of you who would like to know, it's in a follow-up tweet to that, and this is what I said. In case someone thinks the remedy I speak of is available internally, ballot box, dissent, whatever, take it to the next level. No, not so. The historic resolution to corrupt, criminal, empire, tyrants, and authoritarians, let's put all that together, the historic resolution is nearly always destruction caused by a foreign adversary, many times started because of traitors inside the organization, right? Inside the institution, inside the country. But the destruction is nearly always caused by a foreign adversary. Same today. Defend yourselves, but prep, pray, stay out of the way. So that's what I sent forward, and I also had a link there to my video that I put up the other day about it's better to be Herod's pig than a son. In other words, the United States, if you're a friend of the United States, you're going to get betrayed. It's better to be an enemy of the U.S. because at least you know where you stand. But if you're a friend, the U.S. is going to betray you. How many examples do I have to give you? So then I had a couple of follow-up tweets to that, and I said I am referring to this tweet thread, and what I said was this: in further explanation of my former tweet, consider Psalms 37:15. Here we go with the spiritual thing. So from here on out, guys, if you don't want to hear this stuff, we're going to do Ask Me Anything or question and answer towards the end of this. But if you don't want to hear this, go get a cup of coffee, some scotch, whatever. In further explanation of my former tweet, consider Psalms 37:15. The tools, weapons the U.S. has used unrighteously against others are now coming to them. That means both the government and the government, since we have supported this government, the government is using those weapons against us. So they're having their weapons that they've used against others used against them. And I'm going to give an example of that here in a minute, a very broad one. And of course, the weapons that they've made against others, they're now turning against us, the American people, their own people. Just one example, and here's the broad one I was talking about. The sanctions economic war against Russia by U.S., NATO, and the European Union, which are all basically lies and unjust, is actually not harming Russia. It's harming the U.S., its allies, the EU, etc. Isn't that interesting how that's worked? So the weapons that we were using unrighteously in this thing, when we've caused this entire conflict, whether goading Russia into it or not, whatever, we use these weapons against Russia. And in this particular explanation, I'm using the sanctions. And yet, who's getting hurt by these things? Don't believe the MSM here in the United States, other than they are starting to come around saying, hey, there's a problem. But they're not. But they want to blame it all on Putin and Russia. No, we started this, and the karmic laws of the universe, for lack of a better term, you can say God if you want. I'm just leaving all that open. Because of our unrighteous deeds, those weapons are being turned back on us. And we're the ones that are suffering the effects of the sanctions, etc. And I think most of you understand that. Further, the U.S. has now turned weapons against its own people that were only to be used against foreign adversaries. Why are the people experiencing this? Consider 1 Chronicles 21. There is more, but that's sufficient for now. 1 Chronicles 21, just so you know, I'm not going to read that. David had numbered Israel, meaning he had numbered the number of men who were of military age. That's basically what he did, and that was prohibited under the law. Because he violated the law, a plague started not to him, but amongst his people, and his people started getting sick from this plague and dying from the plague. Now, this might be allegorical. I'm not going to argue that. But the point is that we're responsible for what our government does to some extent, if not completely. And regardless, the leaders that are up there, when they do these things, we're going to suffer the consequences, which is what's happening now. And of course, in David's time, the plague went to the people. How did the plague get stopped? David had to go make an offering and say, God, you can kill me, if you're that upset, but please stop the plague. And because he was willing to humble himself and repent, God stopped the plague. So let me sign out of this because it does interfere with my internet connection, and I don't need it anymore right now. You can go to my Twitter account if you want to read all of that's going on. On Twitter, it's at Royston Potter, at capital ROYSTON, capital POTTER. Okay, and you can also go to Gab. That particular stuff's not on Gab, but at any rate. Okay, let me put this aside so we know that's done. So that's where we are with everything that's happening, and we're going to reap the whirlwind. And I've talked about this before. Everything I've just talked about the destruction and all that. Look at what we're doing to our children. Look at what we're doing to our families, to men and women, the relationship there, as I talked about for a long time. Look how they're stealing our money and sending it to a corrupt government elsewhere. And that's not the only one. I'm kind of shadowing my words here a little bit because I probably already said too much. But you understand what I'm saying. And there was a man many years ago who warned that the way this thing would happen, how the United States would be taken down, is exactly as we're seeing now, that we would spend our money, our treasure, and our blood in foreign conflicts. And then when we finally do get attacked, we won't have anything to fight back with. We want to start a war with China? I thought the Bidens were friends with China. You know how all that goes. It's all for show, and I know a lot of you people know that. The problem is these things can get out of control real fast. And don't forget, as I've always said, no matter what the situation is with supposedly our enemies elsewhere, whomever and whatever they are, the real target of all of these weapons, these sanctions, these laws, these shortages, they're infringing on our rights, the first and second and fourth, all of them. You're the target. You're the end target of all of this. You're the enemy of these people. Daryl Beatty, when the pipeline got blown up, that was the 26th of September, I think. Daryl Beatty, who used to work in the White House, I guess he used to be a speechwriter for Trump, something like that, I don't know. But he's an investigative reporter now. He gets interviewed a lot. I saw a thing on Twitter from him as well, where he was congratulating a CIA operative for basically. He didn't say he revealed it, but he said, "Nice move" to this CIA operative, this guy who fronts for the CIA and apologizes for him and supports him. And Daryl Beatty said, "Nice call on that the CIA blew up this pipeline." If you go back to my video, it's better to be Herod's pig than his son. I'm not going to explain again what that means. Go back and look at it. It's a couple of video or two back. Right during that thing, I said that it was the intelligence community that did that. They have their own army, their own navy, their own air force. If the naval forces that were there at the time, they probably didn't do it. They probably were a covering force and in a support role. But I do believe it was the IC, and apparently Daryl Beatty has uncovered that, and he's going to report on that soon. So looks like I was right about that. All right, so let me hit this other stuff real quick, and then we'll go to a little AMA, a little question and answer. Hold on a second. How we doing? We still running? Yeah, we're still running. Okay. All right. I mentioned Psalms 37:15. And I want you to go read all of Psalms 37. Well, who was that? Hey, Felicia, how you doing? Good to see you. I would encourage all of you to go read Psalm 37. It shows you where we are and what's going to happen to the wicked. It's very similar to what Malachi 4 says. Okay, very similar. And some other scriptures. Another one I'm going to quote here. But, yeah, you didn't think I'd ever do this again, did you, Felicia? What I told you still holds true. But some things have happened where I felt like I needed to come up here, at least for a little bit here, okay? Okay, so Psalms 37 is where I got the title for this video. Their sword shall enter into their own heart. Psalm 37, verse 15. In other words, when they come out to do these things to you, it's going to turn on to them. And that's exactly what my point was with the sanctions and these things that they've done to Russia. And all the other countries now they're talking about that are even withholding their votes against Russia or going along with Russia. They want to sanction them. But what's happening is the sword that the U.S., the EU, and NATO are using unrighteously to do these things has come back to us. And I agree, that's part of the Great Reset. That's part of the WEF, Klaus Schwab. They want to take down Western, the collective West. I already know that. I understand that. But regardless of that, that's what's happening. So those weapons are being turned against us. And again, people like Biden, people like Klaus Schwab, people like the Rothschilds, the robber barons, and I could name a whole bunch of other people. They want us destroyed anyway. So this is fine and dandy with them. But don't think that they don't know that. Okay? Why is it that we'll shut off our own oil producing? Biden says, "Oh, I'm not doing that." That's not. Well, of course he did. Of course he has. And anybody with a grain of salt in their mind can figure that out. But he says, it's not his fault. So he shuts off all of our oil production under this fantasy about, green energy, which is nothing more than a Marxist idea to destroy industrialization. So, thank you to the 210. Okay. But for some reason, it's okay to go. I mean, if oil's the problem, why not open up our own? We could be selling that oil to the world. Oh, no. Biden and the administration go to Saudi Arabia. Oh, increase your production. They go to Venezuela that they've sanctioned. You get my point. How is shutting off the oil in the United States make any sense when you're going to buy it from somebody else and tell them to increase their production? They're liars and deceivers. They believe their own vomit. They eat their own vomit. Do I think the elections are going to make this any better? If the Republicans get in, are they really going to go after these people? Are they really going to go after the DOJ and the FBI? Are they really going to go after all these people that have done all these horrible things? Have they ever? The best indication of what's going to happen in the future is what's happened in the past. So anyway, go read Psalms 37. In verse 28 of Psalms 37, it's very interesting. In one version of the Bible, it says, "The offspring of the wicked perish." In the King James version, the word that they translated is seed. The seed of the wicked shall be cut off. And I got into an argument some time ago about this word seed, because people try to impose a particular religious dogma onto Genesis 3, where it talks about the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And they say, oh, that's something specific, a specific individual. Well, if you read this in Psalm 37, you'll see that that's not the case. Okay? And it's not seeds. When it plural can be seed or seeds, but in most of the contexts in the Old Testament, seed means all posterity. So anyway, the word, by the way, just in case you want to know, is zerah, and if you look it up in the Strong's, it's word 2233, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I brought that up because many times I've told you, like it says in Isaiah 28 and in Malachi 4:1, that the wicked will be left without root or branch. And I've explained to you what that means is that we're really special. God's given us a chance, men and women, to have posterity. A lot of people argue that the only purpose of marriage is offspring. I saw that on Twitter the other day too, and I answered that because that's not true. The very first reason for marriage was companionship, and it says so right in Genesis 2. And then during the process of multiplying and replenishing the earth, you do have children, and that's the blessing. But the very number one reason for marriage is companionship. The male-female relationship in all of its assets. So the wicked are left without root or branch. In other words, they're cut off from their ancestors and from whatever posterity they have. They are severed and become, if anybody becomes sexless, it's these people. I don't want to name names because I can't really judge them. But you can imagine the evil people that have done all these things to change your DNA, to make you take something you didn't want, to invent new diseases, to try to control the population. That's evil. And they will be cut off. They will become lifeless, sexless shadows. The other scripture I want you to read is Isaiah 28. You taking notes? Isaiah 28, because it talks about these people that are doing all these things and how they're going to be uncovered, how the refuge of lies will be uncovered, okay? How when they lay on a bed, the bed will be too short for them, and the covers, they won't be able to cover themselves. In other words, they're going to be revealed, and they're going to be put down. The question is, who's going to do it? And everybody will say, oh, Jesus is going to do it when he comes back. That's not how it's worked historically. Not saying that's not part of the program, but that's not how this is going to work. As I've often talked about with how wicked and evil the Western alliances have been, the collective West, and what they've done. Again, pedophilia, I'm not supposed to say that on here. You know, the drama queen, the drag queens, the mutilations, the trafficking, the stealing of money. I mean, I could go on and on and on. In ancient times, as I mentioned here, historically corrupt nations were never corrected by those inside. The American Revolution was really an exception. One of the few. There are a few in history, but that was a real exception. And there are questions as to whether that really happened the way we're told. But at any rate, historically and scripturally, the way evil nations are taken care of is by a foreign power that comes in and destroys it. Go look it up. Go read it all. Corrupt, evil governments are not usually put back in place by their own people because the people are in chains. What happens is a foreign power comes in to destroy it. And I've said that Russia is the Assyria. I'm not saying Russia's bad or good. I'm just showing you the correlation here. Russia is like Assyria in the Old Testament that came down and destroyed, actually just took them off into captivity, but destroyed the nation of northern Israel as opposed to the nation of Judah. And that's how it's always been. Evil, corrupt governments are thrashed by foreign powers, and it's coming. And we're seeing some of the effects of that already. I might just mention one other thing, and then we'll go to, I was going to read a little bit in Psalms, but I'm just going to ask you all to read again. Psalm 37, especially that verse 15 and verse 28. And Isaiah 28, all of that. Okay? And then the deal in First Chronicles there, 21 I think it is, where the plague came on Israel because David, the leader, did something he wasn't supposed to, and the plague came, and the only way to correct that, one of the few times, was for David to repent and to set it right. Okay, let's move on to one other thing. You know, I have a lot of respect for Colonel Douglas MacGregor, and there are other people out there who are actually giving accurate information about what's happening on the ground in Europe. And there is a very strong propaganda arm, and of course the MSM is involved in this. And I'm going to mention one name in particular, other than Colonel MacGregor, who I have respect for. I saw General Petraeus, who you know I have a problem with, and I've talked about him and what he is. I mean, you know, he's some great general, and he goes and he pays off the Taliban, etc., to not fight. Now that's really amazing. And he's talked about, everybody, you know, lauds him. He has that affair with his subordinate, a mistress that he should have gone to Leavenworth for. Of course, he wouldn't. And I was accosted by so-called veterans groups calling my military service into question. And when I raised the Petraeus issue, you know, they don't want to talk about that. So Petraeus came out the other day, it's been about a week ago, I think, and said, oh, yeah, we're seeing a turning point in Kharkov and Kherson here now. It's a turning point in the war, and you know, it's going to go our way now. You compare that to the real knowledge of Colonel Douglas MacGregor. I might also remind you that it was Petraeus who said that the Constitution doesn't matter anymore, that America's going away, and that the future is the North American Union, Mexico, U.S., and Canada united. Petraeus said that. Violates his oath across the board. But those are the kind of people, and I could name a lot of other general officers, and even down to lieutenant colonel. I see some lieutenant colonels up there. They're getting paid to say these things, or if they really believe their Kool-Aid, their own vomit, they're really sad, or they're evil. So at any rate, I wanted to bring that up on Petraeus. I think that was the last thing I had. Yeah, that's the last thing I had. So let's do a little Q&A. As is usual, I do still throw a lot of information. Question for you, Roy Bundy, running for governor. Do you agree that abortion is acceptable in cases of rape? I saw Bundy on to support arresting women. What? Religion? What? Arresting? This is a very loaded question, and I cannot answer it succinctly, and I'm not going to try. I was at Bundy Ranch. I'm not saying that I'm friends with the Bundys. I know them. I've talked to them. I've met them more than once. I have a lot of respect for them standing up against the tyranny of the federal government, the BLM, not Black Lives Matter, it's the Bureau of Land Management. um, abortion's wrong. Okay, I'll probably turn off a lot of people by saying that it's wrong. How a mother who is supposed to have love for her offspring can kill it is beyond me now. The argument goes the other way. Well, you know, she has control of her own body. It's her decision. And we could go back and forth on whether the baby's separate from her, all sorts of things. We could talk about rape, all of those things. Okay? Should you have the option to have an abortion if you're raped? I will say this: if you hold a child responsible for the sin of its parents, you're playing with fire. Period. Does that mean that women that engage in this should be arrested? No. There'd be, you got to draw the line somewhere. I'll tell you where that's going to matter, okay? Where that's going to matter is when she gets to the other side and sees that child that she refused, and God's standing there and saying, "You took the blood of an innocent." I don't think that the laws can go to that point. And if they do, I think that there are some problems with that. What about the rest of the children of that family? Taking the mother and throwing her in jail. Look what they did to Dr. Simone Gold for just merely walking into the Capitol. They threw her in jail for 60 days or something like that. What about her children? Was that justified? No. And the same will go for this. That's the way I look at it. I might also talk about, just real quick, back on some spiritual things here, because this all ties in. You can't separate justice from mercy. Okay? They're intertwined. They balance each other. So I made a statement some time ago, and it's in my book as well. If any of you, this is not available anymore. It's out of print, like I told you before. It's based on historical information, not the New Testament. There's some New Testament material in here, but it's primarily historical. I didn't want to rehash the New Testament. And those of you who have read the book will know that. If you want to read the book, it's available online now. I mean, you can't order the book; it's out of print. But Roosevelt, who usually follows me, but anyway, put a website on the internet where you can go and download the manuscript of the book or hear me read it. There's one mistake I think that never got corrected, and that is that there's chapter 1 in there twice when there's supposed to be an introduction. But regardless, reading it's better anyway, I think. But you can go see that. It's and if anybody has that link, maybe you could put it up here. But my point in all this is that in that book and in my historical research, I found out that this person that we know as Jesus wasn't a pastoral shepherd, you know, and even pastoral shepherds, they carried swords and stuff. They would fight if somebody tried to come to the flock. Well, I got this person that was obviously responding to my book and saying Jesus wasn't in any way a military guy or involved in any type of fighting or anything like that. And I know this gets real deep with a lot of people who want to see Jesus as just all love and nothing else. But the scriptures are very, very definitive about who God loves and who he doesn't and what he's willing to do. And my point was that Jesus was, in fact, a military commander of sorts. And that didn't set well, and this person didn't like it, so they made these comments. Um, I explain in my book what it is, and I'd go a little further as I did when I answered this person. I didn't name them, but I just put it up on Twitter as just kind of to anybody who wanted to read it. God doesn't change. Be he in heaven or be he incarnated on earth. If he changes, he's not God. He's called, it even says it this way, the Lord is a man of war. Look it up. The Lord is a man of war. And the Lord there is the YHVH. Both times it's used in there, which is another interesting concept. He can be loving, there's the mercy, or he can be a man of war, which is justice. So you have justice, which is gevura, and you have mercy, which is chesed. And they're perfectly balanced. And that perfect balance is real beauty. Okay. There I go, philosophizing again. So hopefully I answered that to you. Abortion is acceptable in case of rape. Do you agree that abortion is acceptable? I think I answered that question. Are we done, Roy? Not yet. All right. General Flynn. I don't trust General Flynn. I haven't since the day I tried to give him and Trump both, as most of you follow me know. But if he's one of our top intelligence people and he knew what Trump was going into with what the IC was about and he fell for the FBI interview in the White House, even I wouldn't do that. No, there's something wrong with Flynn. I don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't look right. Uh, I knew Ammon was on Tim Pool. I only saw bits and pieces of it that what people put up, sent to me or whatever. I didn't listen to the whole program. Again, I have a lot of respect for Mundy. Hopefully, he makes it into the governorship. I honestly think that he will do a good job. But yeah, sometimes you can take things a little too far. Roy, I would love to hear you speak with Michael Adams on his. I don't know who Michael Adams is. Do you mean Mike Adams on Natural News? Is that who you're talking about? Mike Adams of Natural News. I'm not in the best relationship with Alex Jones, Mike Adams, and that group. I mean, there are lots of reasons why, and I really can't get into it here. But um, you know, like I said before, I'm a pariah. I'm anathema, and I'm happy with that. I'm not a traditionalist, and because I'm not a traditionalist, a lot of people don't want to give me a whole lot of time, and that's fine. You know, I've accepted that for quite a long time. Be happy twice. Wish I could send you a whiskey through the chat. Oh, thank you. Be happy 22116. I appreciate that. like I said, since I'm talking about spiritual things, I'm not going to have alcohol when I do that. Roy, I have a question. Why don't you get a Rumble account? Because I'm done. I've got an Odyssey account. I don't see any reason for me to do this off. As a matter of fact, right now I'm kind of worried because Jackson Hinkle comes on here shortly, and you know I don't want to infringe on anybody else because these people work hard. It's their livelihood. This is not my livelihood. Okay, I do this because I feel a spiritual responsibility, a political responsibility, right? But I don't make money off this. Those people they depend on their shows for their sustenance, and so that's why in the description box I've talked about them and given you those links, and it goes for a lot of other people. You know, um, High Impact Flicks, you know, Brian there, um, just a lot of people. You know, I just so I've backed off because I really they're the ones that need you, and I'll come on every once in a while and throw some information up, but I don't want to take a whole lot of time. So Rumble really isn't on my radar right now. Things might change, you know. I mean, I'm not setting concrete on backing out, but it's just you know I've been doing this since 2009, and I've been fighting. That's the wrong word. I've been standing against injustice and evil for decades in one form or another. And now I see these young people, like, and they're young to me, Alex Christoforou, one of the members of the Duran, Brian Berletic. Brian and I have a little disagreement on the Chinese situation, but that's not a big deal. His information is great, and he's a young man. Jackson Hinkle, who's 22, 23, and look at him. He's a dynamo. Already been on Tucker Carlson and some other. No, he's great. So I feel like it's time for these young people to take that baton and prove themselves. I've been through the grinder. About the only thing I'm good for anymore is just being a counselor, I guess. And even there, I mean, I can't be right all the time. There's some very difficult questions that you have to wrestle with. I just did a little while ago on Ammon Bundy's position on this abortion thing, and I didn't mean to hem haw around that, but you know, we've got to be careful about taking retribution or judicial action or prosecutorial action by the state. That I have a problem with. Okay, I do. Yeah, abortion as birth control is wrong. I agree, 100%. Pamela Barone, absolutely, 100%. Okay, and like I said, you know, there's a lot of arguments that can be made either way, but we're not supposed to hold children responsible for the sins of their parents. Oh, Denise Leroux West, you're done because you're tired. That's all right. I understand. I'm kind of going on a lot here. Sophia, yes, I am on Odyssey, and I hope that even if YouTube takes down some of my videos, which they've done, it'll still show up on Odyssey. But I've seen that hasn't happened the way it's supposed to every time. Sometimes when YouTube even months later, takes one of my videos off, I notice it drops off Odyssey too, which I thought wasn't supposed to happen. So I don't know what is going on there. But again, you know, I've got to give these youngsters that are coming up a chance to shine. Roy, I would be a great interview with Mike Adams. So it was Mike Adams you were talking about. Well, Mike Adams isn't going to have me on. Okay, he's just not. I'll tell you a story. Okay, I'll tell you a story about why I know why that's the case. Oh, hold on here. Sandy Aaron, I got to answer this first, real quick, Catherine. Sandy Aaron says, Chabad rabbis say Edom must be destroyed before the Moshiach appears, but they say the West is Edom and the West is being destroyed. Yeah, but that's not because they're Amalek or Edomites. That's not the reason. I could get into the history of that and what's going on. Frankly, I don't trust the Kabads at all. Okay, all right. I know about the Jewish history. I know who's who, and they ain't it. Okay, so sorry, but I will tell you this. No, I'm not going to tell you that.
I'll let that be. I better not open that can of worms right now. Okay, going back to the story of Mike Adams, Catherine, let me explain this. Let me get another little swig of water here. Why I know that I'd never be on Mike Adams. I've been interviewed by Infowars several times. Um, one time was at Bundy Ranch when I met David Knight, who was working for Alex Jones at the time, working for Infowars, and was at putting his life at risk there at Bundy Ranch. And he and I hit it off. We've been, I wouldn't say friends because we've never really been able to get together, but acquaintances. We chat on the phone every once in a while, text, things like that. Great man, honorable man. But uh, Alex didn't like me getting interviewed because he knows my background, and he didn't want to offend his Bible Belt clientele. Okay, if you know my history, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that was the first issue. The second was prior to that when I did an expose on the Boston bombing, and I explained from a military and intelligence point of view what I saw as being the issue there at that incident. And uh, Mike Adams, who was filling in for Alex Jones at the time, had carried that video of mine on his channel, Mike Adams' channel, his natural news, I guess, at the time. I put my video up, and like I've always said, all my videos can be used as long as you don't change the content. Try to make me say something I didn't. You can take excerpts and all that. Just don't try to change my basic points. That'd get me upset. But you're free to repost those, and that goes for all of you too. But so Mike Adams apparently knew that, and he put it on his channel, and I was fine. True News has done that too. True News has put up some of my things. So, and others, a lot of others. But we're talking about Mike Adams. So Mike Adams put that up on his channel, and then when he was filling in for Alex Jones, Alex was on vacation or something. I don't remember what it was, but Mike had played an excerpt from one of my Boston bombing videos on Infowars. Yeah, they did. It didn't stay up long. Alex found out about it, and it got taken down. And then it was removed from Mike Adams' site as well. Not because of anything I demanded. I actually told them it's fine for you to do that, to put them up. It's fine for you to put up those videos, just so you know. But Alex saw it and he had to take it down. Again, because he didn't want to offend his Bible Belt clientele, his audience. All right, so I'm never going to be on Mike Adams. That's never going to happen. I'm going to answer this Be Happy 22:116 just so you know. Be Happy 22:16 says, a child at 5 weeks is the size of a sesame seed. That's not true. I've had 11 kids. I know better than that. No brain, no development. No, that's not true. No, not true. But I'm not even going to go to the biological explanations, the heartbeat, whether they can feel pain, anything like that. This is one reason why I recommended, one of the thousands of reasons I recommended Michael Heiser to you to go for some spiritual instruction on especially the Hebrew scriptures in the New Testament. This is how he explains it, and he's absolutely right. I've tried to say the same thing, but he said it very succinctly and very well. Being a child of God is not a quality, it's a status. Do you understand what I'm telling you? In other words, it's not whether you have all of your faculties, it's not even if you sin. It says that you are made in the image of God. It's a status. So your quality of life is immaterial. to that. Now that doesn't mean that the wicked won't get punished for their evil ways, because their status is in the image of God. Although there's some question about that, especially with the serpent seed and all that we've talked about in the past. But if you destroy that status of God in the womb, those who do, how did Jesus quote it? First of all, if you hurt one of the little ones, it'd be better for you to have a millstone put around your neck and you thrown into the depths of the sea, number one. Number two, what you have done unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done unto me. Therefore, if you go out and you help somebody, what you do to the least of these people, you've done to me. In other words, right, you've helped somebody, you've helped Jesus, basically. If you kill an infant, if you kill an image of God, the status of God, you've done that to Jesus. You may as well have aborted Jesus. Okay? Yeah, I agree with that, Jimmy C. They need spiritual healing. That's true. Yeah, but see, that's never really going to happen. There have been a lot of, I know Ted Bundy. There is a relationship, by the way, if you know that, Ted Bundy and the Bundys. But anyway, Ammon's got a problem. I've called him on the carpet several times, which is one reason why I'm not one of his best friends. I've called him on the carpet for a couple of things, more than that he's done that I thought went too far on some things. And who am I to say? Yeah, I guess you could say that. Who are you, Roy? What have you got to say? Why is your opinion more important? Well, I try to stick to this, and in here, it definitely says. People say, "Well, there's nothing in there that says abortion's wrong." Oh, yes, there is. It's all over here, but one in particular, and it's in Leviticus, and it says that if an unborn child, basically, if an unborn child is the victim of mischief, then the person that committed that mischief will be executed. Which is probably where Ammon Bundy gets his idea for that. But we're not a theocracy. Yeah, justice tempered with mercy. Very good, Daniel Cartwright. It's balance. Exactly. I like that. Look at Solomon. He's going to cut that kid in half. Give half to one woman, half to the other. Do I see an awakening of people separating from political parties and practicing sovereignty and common law? Not the latter. I see people that are pretty fed up with both parties, but they'll still go and vote. And I'm not saying, some time ago I said, look, I don't believe in voting anymore. I think it's rigged across the board. But it's like making a statement. It's like being a witness. So in my estimation, I know people say, well, if you vote, then you submit yourself to the, all that, to the state, whatever. But witnessing against them by voting against their stuff or voting for somebody who says they're going to do the right thing, I think that's a legitimate thing to do. Okay, that's witnessing against evil. Yeah, the blood of the innocent is the seed of wickedness. Remember that. God killed the firstborn of every Egyptian because of one man's evil ways. Must have understanding of a woman who was victimized. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But notice what you said there. Did a man kill those people? Did a man kill the firstborn of every Egyptian? JB? JR? Who does it says killed those people? It says God did. There's some things we really can't judge well as people. And it's out of our hands there. Now, I've already quoted Leviticus where it says the person that does mischief, zip, out the door, right? Wow, I didn't know that. Marita, Dr. Simone Gold's fiance got 24 years because like I said, we have an evil government. Who's standing up? There's nobody standing up for. Louis Gohmert, Congressman Louis Gohmert, and Congressman Thomas Massey Some I see some things that Josh Hawley does that are good. Um, Rand Paul, sometimes I think he's a little too wishy-washy too, but we only have a half a dozen people up there who do anything. We have a wicked, evil nation. And as Tom Fitton said, there's no reason to ever again trust the DOJ or the FBI. Every person that's brought up on any charges by the DOJ and FBI should be acquitted by juries, but people don't understand that they have that power. And in D.C., you're not going to be able to do it anyway, because those are rigged. Those are all rigged. Yeah, I agree, Monica, that Dr. Gold is a wonderful lady. I did not know that happened to her fiance. Nothing surprises me. Hopefully, if the one good thing, if Trump does run in 2020, or makes it in 2024, I don't know that he will, but and I'm not even sure he'll do the right thing because he seems to have he's reticent. He should have pardoned Julian Assange and a lot of those other people. We could name a whole bunch of them, and he didn't. Instead, he pardoned people that were kind of cronies, right? But if he gets in, he should pardon just about everybody except those who did have ties to the organizations that were actually doing, and I'm not saying the Oath Keepers, that actually did do bad things, criminal things. But I don't think he has the courage because he just doesn't. He still won't disavow his OWS today. He still won't, with all the information that's out there. And look what they're doing. Fauci and Gates and CDC and all that, they're starting to push it again because it's not for fixing disease. It's for causing it. Yeah, Jesus was a freedom fighter. Walter, how you doing? Yeah, you know that. You've read my book. You've seen Dr. Robert Eisenman's works, who is one of the world's foremost authorities on the Dead Sea Scrolls, who actually commented on my book. Well, yeah, Dr. Eisenman's ideas and proofs even are not accepted by the traditionalists because it shows that Jesus wasn't what the traditional Christians say he was. And he's in a different time. I haven't noticed the moon doing cartwheels. A lot of people tell me that, but I really haven't seen that. Maybe it's just the timing, but I've never seen that. I've watched for it a couple times, never seen it. American Medical Association, no, AMA. Ask me anything. That's what. I guess you're not a regular on here, RT, are you? I don't think I've ever used that before. I've usually used the Q&A, but yeah, when I say AMA on here, unless I say it's the American Medical Association, it's an Ask Me Anything. Maybe I better change the title. D. Robinson, the sword is equal to Bible scripture. Well, wait a minute. That's an easy way out so that you don't have to take any responsibility, that you think all you need to do is speak the word. Nope, you're wrong. Okay? I don't mean to be emphatic about it or dogmatic, but you're wrong. The two-edged sword coming out of the mouth, yeah, that's true. But he also told his followers that if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. And he wasn't talking about going and getting a Tanakh. Okay? And throughout the scriptures. See, you really need to go read my book. No, vengeance is one thing. Defense is something else. Andrew Pete put up vengeance is mine. That's true. But defense is something else. Okay? So no, there's the sword of the word, true, cuts both ways, it cuts, right? But there's also, go buy a sword, sell your clothes, go buy a sword. And then David killing Goliath. Just as one example, and I could do tons more. Okay? I did a, and Felicia might remember this if she's still here. I did a video on that commandment, thou shalt not kill. And I went to it in the Hebrew. And the real indication is that you don't kill the innocent. It really doesn't mean you can't kill. If that were the case, Moses was a horrible murderer. He didn't just kill the Egyptian. He killed thousands of people, Israelites and others. You don't kill the innocent. And that in the word, in the Hebrew word for that's used in that commandment is the understanding that it's talking about the innocent. So where does that take you? Okay. Now you are supposed to have a sword. You're supposed to have weapons. The demons are afraid of weapons. Why do you think they're trying to disarm you? Because demons are afraid of weapons, even the spiritual ones. Even the spirit demons are afraid of weapons. Good question, Walter Balsley. Man, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. I can sure be verbose, can't I? I have a card now that I give out to people, and at the bottom of it, I tell them, I'm a former Army officer, historian, author, filmmaker, all these little things. And at the very bottom, it says, sometimes didactic, that means I teach a lot. Often loquacious, that means I'm a big mouth. I can talk a lot. But I'm never boring. I'm always interesting. What is the greatest immediate threat? Well, guarding your heart is number one, I would think. And of course, protecting your family and all those things. Guarding your heart is probably the biggest thing right now, because don't forget, the angel has been commanded to go and set the mark of God in the forehead of those men who cry day and night over the wickedness of the world, and the women too. And that seal is God's law written in your heart and mind. So your heart, and people say, well, you can't follow your heart; it'll deceive you. Well, argue with the scriptures on that, okay? An evil man's heart will do evil, but if you're a good person, you're following your heart. That's what you're supposed to do. The scriptures say that. So I would say guard your heart. Try to separate from a lot of the things that are going on. Like tonight, we're spending a lot of time talking about spiritual things. I think that's necessary. Getting out in nature. I put up some things about camping here a while ago with family and friends. Being with my kids, my grandkids, my friends, those types of things. That's what really matters. So guard your heart and prepare, pray, part of guarding your heart, and try to stay out of the way. The commandment is that we can't try to do all you can to get out of Babylon, that you don't partake in their plagues, okay? And they're going to force you to take their plagues, right? They force you to take their plagues, by gunpoint if necessary, right? So they're evil. They're absolutely evil. Kate Hempstead, how you doing? Nice to see you. Thanks for everything you do, sending me all that material. I'm not on, you probably noticed, I'm not on Twitter much anymore. I'm really backing off. This is kind of an exception. I'm going to do these YouTube things very rarely now. Because, like I said, I think that there are a lot of other people that that you need to give your time to. Yeah, I think Flynn's a gatekeeper. I don't trust Flynn. Like I said, for a long time, I don't trust him. Pompeo, not at all. Not at all. Look, looking for the crimson thread. Yeah. I tell you what, after I put this up, I don't want to do that. I'll try to, I can't do that either. It's on WordPress. Go to wordpress.com, the crimson thread. See if that works. You might find it that way. Or if you're really brave, you can go on to Google and write down WordPress, the crimson thread, Royston Potter. You'll probably get a lot more information about me. Not that I'm afraid of you seeing it, but there's good and bad there. People lying, people twisting things. But, my earlier life is on there, of course. But I think it'll come up that way. Don't buy a used book. Those are going to be too expensive. I mean, they're out of sight now. I think they were going for $20 when they came out. Yeah, I know. AJ still holds on to Trump, and he's never apologized for what he did to David. And David Knight's been proven correct on his opposition to what Alex was doing 100%. And Alex has not, at least not publicly, apologized to him. And I know David, and David's never told me that he's apologized to him. So Alex has some real problems. But I might speak to this. Try not to get thrown off. The judgment against Alex Jones is unjust for a lot of reasons. First of all, of course, they're trying to impinge on the First Amendment. Uh, Saying that you don't believe that something happened is not defaming somebody. I suspect that some of this might get overthrown on appeal, but I don't know that because the judicial system is so corrupt. But this is what I will say, and I've talked about it on this video channel and on Twitter often, and that is that there are birds of the feather flock together. In the early days of this country being set up, of course, you had the Irish would live, in their communities, and the Catholics in theirs, and the Protestants in theirs, and the Brits in theirs, and the Italians in theirs. I mean, even today, we have Chinatowns, right? You can go to San Diego, and you'll go to Little Italy, where a lot of Italians settled. You get my point? There are communities of people of like-mindedness. Conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, you get the idea. There are also communities, vast, huge communities of Satanists. Satan really isn't a bad term if you understand the Hebrew. Let's change that and say devil worshippers. Satan and the devil really aren't the same thing. But that go listen to Michael Heiser. I've explained it before too, but go listen to him. He'll tell you. Okay. Devil worshippers. There are communities of these people, and they put into power when they're there long enough. I mean, the whole area in Connecticut, for instance, is where they went after the Salem witches. Remember that? That area is steeped in some really bad stuff. And there are other areas of the country too. I ran into a witch coven in Alabama by accident at night. That was a little scary. So there are these communities of these people that are devil worshippers, that are I'll just put it that way. There's some other ways I could explain it, but there are communities of these, and they put into power mayors, city councils, prosecutors, medical people. I mean, the entire community are these people, and so they can cover up anything, especially if they have the assistance of the intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI, the White House. You get my drift? I don't think Alex mounted a very good defense. I don't know exactly what he got in his depositions. I mean, as far as deposing his accusers. But I don't think he did a very good job. And I don't think it was just the money. That's all I'll say about it. If you read between the lines there, as far as communities around the country that are Satanist communities or devil worshiping communities, that's a better way to say it. There really are. And they stick together like the Democrats do. A Democrat could be way out, like AOC, way out in left field with the rest of the Democrats, but they'll support her because she's a Democrat. Well, devil worshippers are the same way. Christians are too independent thinking. Somebody's a little off, we don't want, we have a problem with it, which is actually a disadvantage in a lot of ways. Sometimes you just got to look past the little weaknesses and unite on your common ground. But it's like the scripture says, the children of darkness are wiser than the children of light. It's really bad. Hopefully you're seeing my drift. Hey, Jesse's here. Hi, Jesse. I've been listening to your stuff, believe it or not. Every county and every state has these groups. So you know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. And they have these communities. And again, I think that's what happened up there in that northeast area. I've done a lot of emergency exercises, both in the Army and as a police officer and as an EMT, right? A security professional. And the footage of that whole incident looked like there was no sense of urgency. There was no movement of injured. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And if that had been approached properly, but maybe it wouldn't have. I mean, if Jones did have these things in his depositions, the court may have shut him down because they're all evil. They're all in on it. And it had, of course, as as a target. Firearms manufacturers, the Second Amendment, Christianity. A lot of these people, I remember seeing. I'm being a little circumspect here. I remember seeing one of these people on the stand talking, and she looked like a very wonderful Christian lady. Deception. The devil's not going to come to you as a fanged red with horns and a tail and ugly and nasty. He's going to come to you as a very refined, well-dressed, manicured, handsome, or beautiful person. Those people there all meet that description to the letter. Am I being too forward, Jesse? Saying it the way it is? I'd like to go up there, but I they'd see me coming from 100 miles away. Yeshua was an architect, absolutely. Kelly Davis, he was much higher than a carpenter, absolutely. Educated, learned in Rome, the world teaching, absolutely. Read my book, The Crimson Thread. You'll see that that's absolutely true. Yeah, his father actually helped to build Herod's temple. That they were architects. Yep, that's right. Again, I don't have the link to that book of mine. I'm not saying it's a page burner. It's not a New York Times bestseller or anything like that. It's based on my historical studies and my understanding of the scriptures, and I balance those out. If anybody, I better not. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm pretty upfront about it. If anybody thinks that the Bible wasn't altered by political powers and others, I got a bridge to sell you. Okay, you got to be careful with it. All right, and I'll end on that subject. Beware the priests. They have a stake in things. Beware the priests and what they say, and that goes for pastors, etc. as well. Beware. Test them. If God says test him to see if what he says is true, and if God says let us reason together as one man reasons with another, you better test your priests and your pastors. Not all of them have other agendas, but most of them do, in one way or another. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Christine Pound. Yeah, I'm glad you folks were saying it. BP Earthwatch said that they're around. You have one there in Colorado Springs. Yes, yeah, I know. In Utah, and I've brought this up in several of my videos. I need another drink. No, it's not alcohol. It's water. Hold on a second. Just as an example, Elder Pace of the LDS Church gave a talk one day talking about satanic ritual abuse in the church, that it was evident there. Well, they didn't like what he said, so they threw him away. They sent him off on some mission somewhere, and we never heard from him again. That was back in the early 90s. Then there was the Franklin cover-up situation with Senator John DeCamp, who actually called me because he'd seen me make some comments about the Elder Pace situation and asked me to help in his Franklin cover-up with the Omaha, Nebraska situation with the credit union and the satanic ritual abuse that he was investigating there. And all of his stuff turned out to be true later, but they squashed it all. At any rate, it's a real problem in Utah, and I've run into it. Okay, yeah, they're here. And they pretend to be the best members of the church, whatever the church they're in. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Walter. No, the rain falls on both the good and the evil. And the rain can be regular rain, or it can be eschatological rain, in other words, judgment. And if you're in the way, yeah. Now, we do have a promise that when these destructions start, And I don't know how to say that because I don't believe that everybody's going to be safe. But it does say, do not harm, as I mentioned earlier, do not harm the men who have God's seal in their foreheads, which also means in their hearts. You can destroy everybody else, maids, dogs, cats, cows, men, everybody, but not the men, meaning the men and the women, and anybody who has that seal of God in them. But that doesn't mean that if you get in the way, I mean, if Mount St. Helens blows up while you're there, you're probably not going to live through it. You know what I mean? All right. Yeah, it was just a drill there. Yeah, and they pretended. Yeah, it was all. Yeah, like I said, I've been to probably hundreds of exercises in the Army, the police, the emergency medical services, all those security stuff, all that. No way in, no way in hell was that a real incident. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen. What I'm saying is that it didn't look like the type of response you'd expect. And I'm going to say this. I've got to be careful how I say it. A satanic ritual abuser will offer up their own children. That's what Moloch expects. Get my drift? They put their own children into the fire of Moloch. That's why I don't trust Trump on the situation with the Las Vegas massacre. Yeah, Marita, I understand that about AJ. I'm not saying, yeah, the judge is corrupt. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying about AJ and I don't know what type of deposition or discovery he tried to get on the other side, but it couldn't have been that hard to find out some of the things that I know about it, and yet he didn't use it in his defense. I don't understand. Maybe they just railroaded him, like you just said. Maybe that's all it was. But then, if you will not allow evidence in your defense to come out, then he has a reason for appeal. And I know that's not necessarily a good thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end up well. Because the evil side doesn't care. They've got all the money and the power. They can play that game forever. So I feel bad for AJ on that. I honestly do. Okay, I got physically upset by the way he was mistreated on that. Okay, we've been going for almost an hour and 40 minutes. No, 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 no. Original Mama Grizzly. No, and I've seen you before. No, no, no. You're trying to equate a trade and an engineering ability with the New World Order and with the Masons and all that. There were good Masons and bad Masons, just like there are anything else. If you don't know about how that even influenced the Revolutionary War between the Scottish Rite and the York Rite Masons, you really don't understand. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being an architect, and that's exactly what Jesus is, and his earthly father, if you want me to make that distinction, were. They were, in fact, architects. They weren't carpenters in the sense that, I mean, I'm sure they could build with wood, but they were architects in every sense of the word. Nothing wrong with that. Has nothing to do with the all-seeing eye. Not in the evil sense, anyway. Yeah, thank you, Jesse. That's why I say, Jesse says, the Kenites took over the Levitical priesthood and have never given up power. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, beware of the priests. I even have some problems with Leviticus, okay, and Deuteronomy. If you know the story, it was either Hezekiah or Joel. I forget which king it was, but one of the priests came in and told the king, "Hey, I just found this book in the temple. It's the book of the law." And the king said, oh, "I've never seen this before. Where'd this come from?" It's in the Bible even. I can't. And I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind right now. That's really odd. Okay, that's really odd. I often quote Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and all those. I often do that, but I also understand the mindset of the priests. So I'm very careful with it. That's why when Jesus says, what are the two, when he was asked what the two great commandments were, he said, well, what are the two greatest commandments? What are of all the commandments, what are the greatest commandments? And he says, there are only two. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. In these two are all the law and the prophets. He didn't even have to go and say, well, that thing with where, God said he didn't like the slaying of the bullocks. He's tired of the smoke and the blood and all that. He didn't even have to explain that he had some problems with the Levitical law. He didn't even have to say that. He just said, the only thing I care about is that you love God and that you love your fellow man. That's all I care about. Jews get upset. Catholics get upset. Jehovah's Witnesses get upset. Mormons get upset. Now, a lot is in that, of course. If you love God, you're going to do what you think, what God asks you to do, and it's not necessarily going to be in this. You use this as a guidebook, but so do the evil guys, and you and I both know that, Jesse. Jesus Christ is a calling. It's not a person. I know we probably have some disagreements on that. Jesus Christ just means the Messiah, the King who saves. And it was even used in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when they first found that in here, Yeshu, when they first found it, Yesha, when they first found it in here, here's evidence of Jesus. And then after they looked at it, they're just talking about God's salvation. Yeah. A lot of crazy things here. Okay. Hour and 42 minutes. I think we better call it quits. What do you guys say? Thanks for giving that information, Jesse. I always appreciate your input. And touch not mine elect. Yeah, exactly. That seal of God in their foreheads and in their hearts. Yeah, actually he did, D. Robinson. And Paul actually did say it, and I did a video on it once. All right. I'm not going to talk about Paul tonight. I don't have a lot of respect for Paul. If you followed me for any length of time, you'll know that. Okay. Wow, a lot of comments. I can't keep up with all of them. Paul was Saul, yeah. But Paul was a Herodian, Hellenized guy. He was also a Roman, in my estimation. He was a Roman infiltrator. And my book kind of sets the stage for that, to show you how that worked. There are problems with James. Was actually the leader of the church after Jesus' brother James, and all this is talked about in my book about the familial relationships and all that. But James was actually the leader, not Peter. Yeah, and that throws Christians off, but especially Catholics. But anyway, James was actually the leader. He was the bishop of the Jerusalem Council, Jerusalem Church, which was, of course, the center church. He was most likely the teacher of righteousness in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I explain a lot of that in my book. But the bottom line is that I even have some problems with James. For instance, this wasn't his fault, and I talked about it before. But everybody thinks he wasn't married, that he wouldn't touch a woman, that he wouldn't have sex. Well, that he could not be married, just like Jesus could not have been married, because that was a commandment. That's the way it was. They were Adams reborn. As an Adam, all die. Even in Jesus Christ, we're all been made alive. You propagate your genes, right? Well, James, they got the idea that he was a celibate because of some of the things that Josephus said, that he was a chaste guy, and he took baths several times a day because he was called Banus in Josephus, because he was trying to suppress his sexual urges. Well, that's because he was in a military camp. Basically, that's what Qumran was, a military camp where the women weren't allowed to come, But he was accosted by Paul several times. One for having long hair. Yeah. Where Paul in there says, even nature tells us that it's wrong for a man to have long hair. He's poking fun at James. That's who he's poking fun at, because he never met Jesus. He's poking fun at James. And then another time he says, a man that won't take care of his family is worse than an infidel. Well, he's talking about James again, because James is spending time out in Qumran, away from the family, trying to get ready for this apocalypse. So Paul's a problem, but I do have a problem with James in a couple things because, and I won't go into all that here. I mean, who am I, right? Well, who are you to be in judgment of James' brother Jesus or Paul? Well, that's why I'm a historian, right? And I could tell you my credentials, but I don't want to cause any problem for anybody. But anyway, uh, James believed that he was a vegetarian. The only thing that he would eat is fish, and he would only eat one type of fish. He thought that it was one that didn't use sexual reproduction. That was his scientific understanding of his time. He would eat this particular fish that he thought was spawned sexlessly. Well, guess what? No. It used sex to have progeny. So he was eating things that had been sexually reproduced. So, where do you draw the line? And I've often talked about the real reason. I mean, I don't like pork. Okay, I don't like shellfish, which are all not kosher, right? You know about that, right? Um, yeah, Paul rightfully talked about, Paul didn't know any vegans. Oh yeah, he did. It was James. But anyway, um, the let's see, where was I here? I shouldn't look at the chat when I'm got a thought going. Um, well, that one went away. Maybe it'll come back a little later. All right, let's see. We are commanded by the Lord Jesus Christ to watch and to know the prophecy. Yeah, I agree with that. We're supposed to be watchers. More than anything else, we're supposed to be watchers. Why? To witness. We are to witness against the evil, so that on the day of judgment, God will say, hey, who was that? Catherine. Hey, Catherine, what did old Fauci do? And you'll be able to say, oh, I'm a witness to this, because it takes two or more witnesses to condemn somebody, right? Well, how do you condemn? How can you be a witness if you're not watching and seeing what's going on? So watching is even more important than other actions you can take. Preparing yourself to be a witness. So in the mouth of two or more shall all things be established. Yeah, Paul never met Jesus. That's right, he didn't. And I was talking about James and all that, and I slipped up. So Paul Simon is short. I understand the Apostle Paul wasn't very tall. And there are people going both ways. I don't know. Hi Felicia. Yeah, James is my favorite too. Like I say, I have a few little issues with him. He was very much for the Lex Cornelius came out. If you know what that is, Felicia, it was the commandment, it was the law under Roman law that you couldn't perform a circumcision, and that even Jews weren't permitted to do circumcision, right? It was a Lex Cornelius. Well, James fought back on that, and he says, if you see Romans talking about the Torah, you're okay to go and forcibly circumcise them. No. So he even went too far sometimes. I think that there was a slight rift between James and Jesus that makes sense historically, and some other things that happened. Roy, you called me a Jamesian once on Twitter when we talked. Yeah, I don't know who you are, JR, but I consider myself, if I were to describe my religious institutional affiliation, if I could go that far, I would say I'm a Jamesian Christian. That would be the thing I'm closest to, is a Jamesian Christian. James was, very much for the law. Like I said a few minutes ago, there's some problems with Leviticus, and I know that. There were some problems with that whole stand there. Jesus pointed some of that out, but he also said, he's attributed as saying, and I think this is true, that he who tells men that they, how does it go? I forget exactly how the quote goes, but it's something like, if you say that you don't have to follow the law, then you're the least in the kingdom of heaven. But then again, I go back to didn't, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but did Noah follow the Levitical law? Was the Levitical law, it didn't exist in well, even better, Abraham's time. Levitical law didn't exist as such in Abraham's time. So was the Levitical law a restoration that had been lost that Abraham knew? I don't think so. The scripture says that the law, not the Ten Commandments, the other 603 commandments, there's 613 commandments. The other 603 were added because of transgression. Actually, even more than that. Added because of transgressions. Who's that? And it was a schoolmaster. Anyway. Yeah, Thomas. What are you bringing up here, Felicia? I missed something. Yeah, Thomas, Judas Thomas Didymus, the Apostle Thomas, in his name it tells you who he is. And I talk about that in my book. Thomas, as you know, Felicia, Tom is Hebrew for twin. Didymus is Greek for twin. So when they call his name Thomas Didymus, actually Judas Thomas Didymus, they're saying he's a twin, and they're emphasizing it twice, both in the Hebrew and the Greek. No, hi Mike Baker. No, it'd be hard for me to give notice of being on Twitter. Just check it once in a while. Again, it's at Royston Potter, at ROYSTON POTTER. I've been suspended from there. I've been shadow banned a lot. I've been thrown off for a number of weeks, months. So who knows? And here on YouTube, because I have 2 strikes against me. The first one for giving medical misinformation, right? When I was telling about things, this was about 2 years ago, and then here it was, I think in July, they suspended me again, and I have a second strike that's in effect until next month because I did hate speech, and I explained what the hate speech was. I had been critical of the FBI, so they gave me a strike for hate speech against the FBI. Yeah, no kidding. So who knows how long I'll be on here, right? Tom Anderson, Jesus stated that he fulfilled the law. What does that mean? Felicia, what does it mean to fulfill the law? What does it mean? I shouldn't put you on the spot, Felicia. Tom Anderson, all that meant, it doesn't mean that he put an end to it. That's the way that the law was ended in Jesus. That's not what it meant. In order for Jesus to do what he did, he had to do the law. He had to do it. And the correct translation is that Jesus did the law perfectly. So they couldn't find any shortcoming, he was not short of the mark. So even if Leviticus was wrong, he still did the law so that they could not hold him responsible and accuse him of being a lawbreaker. So Jesus did the law. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that anything was done away. And again, I'm quoting Jesus himself where he says, "He who teaches that the law is done away is the least in the kingdom of heaven." There's a little confusion there, a little difficulty, but that's why I always go back to the two great commandments. Everything else is built on those. And I am suspicious of some of the Levitical laws, I've said. But no, Jesus did not do away with it. He actually did it so that he could not be accused of falling short of the mark. Okay? That's all it was. Well, okay, let's talk about that. Harley Davidson. I think this is a tough one. I can understand, because we were talking about the abortion thing earlier, and all of that. I'm going to go back to this. Now, see, they're starting to play with me here. They're taking me out, so I'm gonna have to shut down. But let me just finish off with this, because they're interfering now. If you want to use that, it says most women would not want to bear a child that was a product of rape. The child has the genes of the father and a sense is the father in some respect. Hey, what did Eve do? If you really understand the Garden of Eden, Eve was seduced by the being that's called the serpent. It really wasn't the snake. That's explaining something else. Basically seduced, raped, something, but she still had the child. It was Cain. She didn't do away with it. Even though Cain became wicked and evil and committed murder and some other things, which showed that he was a product of his father, not Adam, Eve didn't kill him in the womb. Because the child is not responsible for the sins of the parents. Keep that in mind. I better go. They're trying to shut me down. If I'm going to get this loaded up, I got to close it down now or it won't load up. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Think about what we said tonight. Review it if you need to. Send it out if you like. Like I said, that's all great. All right? Okay, let's get out of here before they really screw me up. All right? Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Keep your eyes on the rise and ears of the ground. Situational awareness on high. Some weird things are going to happen in Europe in the next probably 2 weeks. Don't believe everything you hear. Maybe I can touch on some of that later. All right. We'll see you later out here.